Hello folks, in this program I will address the issue of why the philosophy of metaReality as developed by Roy Bhaskar is not idealism. Many people who have been involved with the philosophy of critical realism for a long time, who began when critical realism was just critical realism, perhaps who continued when it became dialectical critical realism. Once Roy Bhaskar began moving into this new stage in the early part of the 21st century, backed away, and as a result there has been something of a split over the last dozen years or so between those critical realists who have continued with Bhaskar into metaReality and those who have remained with one of the older versions of critical realism. So I would like to show why, at least in my view, metaReality is not critical realism, especially by briefly contrasting it with another perspective, the perspective of integralism as developed by Ken Wilber. First, as a refresher, in the philosophy of metaReality, there are three different levels discussed in one context. At the top, there is the cosmic envelope, co-presence, the ground state, non-duality, or unity. Below that is the stage of relative reality, also known as the stage of duality. I call it diversity. Bhaskar sometimes calls it difference. And then finally, there is the level of demi-reality, which is comparable to the Vedic concept of Maya or illusion, similar to splitting and separation and alienation, people feeling cut off from each other, or as I simply call it, disunity. So in other words, ideally, one has a condition in society of unity in diversity. That is, when the state of relative reality is operating within the state of the cosmic envelope. If, on the other hand, the state of relative reality operates within the level of demi-reality, one has that condition of alienation, disunity, and social disorganization. The reason why metaReality, as I have just basically summarized it, is not a type of idealism is because the ground state is not consciousness. The ground state is reality. In other words, an envelope, a cosmic envelope, is a real condition. It's not necessarily a material or physical condition, but it is still real. It's not consciousness or thought or ideals or Platonic's concept of ideal forms. Similarly, relative reality is also not consciousness or thought. If we are looking at relationships, then we are talking about relationships between conditions or things, not consciousness or ideas. And finally, with demi-reality similarly is not consciousness. It's not bad thinking. It's not defeatism, although all of those might result from it. It is a condition of alienation. It's literally alienation from the root alien, being in a condition where one does not belong. And if one does not belong in a place, that is saying that one does not fit into a place. By referring to a place or a condition, one is not talking about consciousness. The closest concept in Ken Wilber's system to Bhaskar's notion of the cosmic envelope, or the ground state, is his notion of a holarchy, or holons. That is not a term he devised himself, but he popularized it. Basically, holons are, according to Wilber, bits of consciousness. And so, according to Wilber, you have holons within holons within holons. Everything, in other words, is reducible to consciousness. Whereas Wilber's integralism is a continuation of the kind of neo-Kantian, referring to Immanuel Kant, the neo-Kantian focus on ideas or thoughts. Bhaskar has transcended that. And although Bhaskar certainly pays attention to consciousness and discusses it, that is not the basis. That is the effect or the result. Certainly, achieving a higher level of consciousness is a good idea, but one does not achieve a higher level of consciousness in and of itself. One achieves that level of consciousness by actually relating to a real condition, or, in other words, a meta-real condition. So by moving into this phase of meta-reality, one's consciousness, and indeed perhaps everything else, becomes improved. So I hope that, stated very briefly, that presents, I'm not sure if it would qualify as an argument exactly, but at least an explanation for why I would say that critical realism, and in particular its latest phase as meta-reality, is not a type of idealism. Instead, it is a continuation of Bhaskar's realism. Until next time, this is Dr. Mark Foster. Have a good one.